During this week's Democratic National Convention, one of the most consistent and effective lines of attack against Donald Trump was framing the presidential election as a race between a fraudster and a convict, and a former prosecutor who has spent her life representing the people.
As a prosecutor, when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people. For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own party begged him to call off the mob and send help, he did the opposite. He fanned the flames.
She did not hold back there. Joining me now is someone who has been very effective at holding Donald Trump accountable, New York Attorney General Letitia James. It's so great to see you, Attorney General James. Thank you so much for joining me today. I just wanted to start with, there's so much for people to wade through when it comes to legal cases. And one of the reasons that Democrats could go out there and call Trump a fraud and a cheat is because you and your fraud case against Trump helped make the case on that front. So if you were speaking to voters out there who are trying to wade through all this, what would you highlight about what that case says about him personally and as a candidate?
A $454 million judgment where he wildly exaggerated the value of his assets. And what we are seeking now is disgorgement. We are recovering, obviously, his ill-gotten gains that inured to the benefit not only of Donald Trump, but his family and all of those who worked for the Trump organization. No one is above the law. And it was simply put, and it was basically emphasized at the convention. And the convention obviously was just magnificent. It was electrifying. The ground shifted from the first day where we gave flowers to President Biden because he embodies the spirit of FDR, to the great communicators, the Obamas, and then to the Clintons, the great explainers, and then to, of course, the Coach Waltz, who is someone who I would love to be my neighbor. He reminds me of Mr. Rogers, and I love Mr. Rogers.
Who doesn't?
Exactly. And then to, of course, the woman of the hour, our Vice President Harris, who basically gave one of the greatest summations that I have heard.
Her speech was so powerful. I mean, she looked to me like she could just walk right into the Situation Room. That's what I've been saying. One of the things that's been so interesting to me, and I wonder how it struck you, is that Trump, another powerful part of her speech was what she said about abortion rights. She talks about it so passionately and personally. And Trump is having a hard time responding to the Democratic convention. I mean, the best he could do was try to claim that his administration will, quote, be great for women and their reproductive rights. That's what he said. And that Republicans are a leader on IVF. Obviously, I had a hard time keeping a straight face reading that out, but you're very familiar with these issues. You've talked about them a lot, too. What do you make of that claim?
Listen, in order to have a functioning democracy, it's really critically important that individuals understand that what is key to a functioning democracy is respecting the rights of individuals, having liberties, having freedoms. And all of those freedoms and liberties are at risk right now. Mr. Trump and his administration represents an existential threat to all that we believe in. Project 2025 is something that Democratic attorney generals are familiar with. Back in 2016, we defended our democracy. They attempted to put forward aspects of Project 2025, and we were successful 80% of the time in winning our cases. Now, that manifesto has been written down, and we are prepared, obviously, to defend our democracy and to defend our freedoms, standing up for liberties and justice, standing up for the rights of women, standing up for the rights of unions, standing up for the rights of seniors, because he proposes to privatize Social Security. It's really critically important that individuals understand that what Donald Trump represents, and that's why all of us must march in quiet defiance to the polls on Election Day and vote for freedom, vote for liberty, and vote vote for democracy and vote for a functioning democracy that respects the rights of all individuals. Not criticism, not grievances, not division, but unity. And that was reflected, again, with that roll call during the convention when everyone proudly respected their states. And, you know, I was sort of jealous of Illinois when Little John came down the steps, which is why I grabbed Spike Lee and said, New York, you know, we need you over here. And he gladly joined us during the roll call.
You were feeling a little competitive. New York had to bring some fun to the, you know, I saw that happen.
We did.
It was, I mean, the contrast is so stark, and Project 2025 is such a good reminder. You've actually done the studying of it. It's so important for people to know what's in there. There is a darkness coming, of course, from the other side. We're already seeing Trump dabbling in gross racist, misogynistic attacks against Vice President Harris. I expect that's going to become worse over the next couple of months. She seems ready for it, but you are also an incredibly accomplished Black woman who has had to deal with these kind of gross attacks from Trump. Is there anything you learned about dealing with that sort of thing that you hope people use over the next couple months?
Yeah, I've been the subject of his attacks, but at the end of the day, the reality is that being the first in anything is nothing more than a historical footnote. People want to know, what are you going to do with the power that lies in your hand? How are you going to transform the lives of others? How are you going to address their felt needs each and every day? How can you use government as a tool, obviously, of progress moving forward? That's what we've got to demonstrate, that it's really not about us. It's not about these historical footnotes. It's about making and improving the lives of Americans, and in my case, the lives of New Yorkers. And that is what I do each and every day. And, you know, I walk into that office with this fire in my belly to see how can we improve the life of New Yorkers? How can we defend the law? What can we do to defend the rights of individuals who are under attack, members of the LGBTQ community, women, workers, unions, seniors, individuals, obviously, in upstate New York, farmers using antitrust laws, given the consolidation of power. And it's important that individuals understand that consolidation of power in the hands of one man, Donald Trump, is very, very dangerous. And individuals have to know that as Democrats, that we must use the law both as a sword and as a shield, and again, improve the lives of Americans and New Yorkers. And that is what I do each and every day. Again, focusing on corporations that are only concerned about the bottom line profit. And again, unfortunately, with these fees and with consolidation of power and with antitrust laws and consumer fraud and landlords that are purchasing a property day in and day out, these corporate landlords, we've got to challenge those abilities and standing up for our democracy and standing up for our rights. It's important that individuals understand that is what Americans would like to see in their government and would like to see in their attorney generals. And as Democratic attorney generals, we do that. We did it in 2016, beating back Donald Trump and his attorneys 80% of the time. And it's an honor and a privilege to stand with a great group of Democratic attorney generals who are prepared to do it once again.
Well, I think anybody watching is thinking to themselves, New York Attorney General Letitia James has a fire in her belly on Sunday mornings as well. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the things you're fighting for. It was a real pleasure talking to you this morning.